Hello class, I'd like to go through another Chapter 2 Pearson MyLab homework exercise. This is number 17 of 60. Problem number 17. This one's kind of a tricky one to interpret. You got to be careful on this one. It's asking you to construct one table of relative frequencies based on a frequency distribution they give you. I'm going to go ahead and click the icon here to view that distribution and pull it up over here. What they've done is they've given you various non-filtered and filtered cigarettes classes for the filtered and for the non-filtered cigarettes, and the frequencies for the tar amount that falls within these classes. So among non-filtered cigarettes, there's one that falls within 17 to 21 milligrams of tar, for instance. Then you also have frequencies for filtered cigarettes as well. Okay. Now, when they ask for the relative frequency, recall that relative frequency takes the raw frequency and divides by the sum of the frequencies. So to get a relative frequency, you take the actual raw frequency and divide by the total sum of the frequencies to get the relative frequency. And then you would convert that to percent by taking it times 100. Right? Well, here you got to be careful because the way they phrased this, they actually want just relative frequency among non-filtered cigarettes, and here they want relative frequency only among filtered cigarettes, not among the whole total. So you got to be careful about that. If you actually look at the sum of all the frequencies, there are let's see, 25 non-filtered cigarettes in total, and there are 25 filtered cigarettes in total. But let's look first at computing relative frequency for those cigarettes falling within the range of 7 to 11 milligrams of tar that are non-filtered. Okay. Notice that among non-filtered cigarettes, there are none between 7 and 11. So we would say that the relative frequency would be 0 because they are not to be found in that table anywhere. There is no range from 7 to 11 in this column. So its relative frequency is 0. However, over here, among filtered cigarettes, there is a range from 7 to 11, and there are 3. There's a 3 for frequency. So here we would divide the 3 by the sum of the frequencies for the filtered cigarettes. Not the sum of all frequencies in both columns, just the sum of the frequencies among filtered cigarettes. So we would take 3 and divide by the sum of this column, which, if I remember right, that was what? The column summed up to 25, is that right? So our relative frequency would be 3 divided by 25 times 100, which would give you a percent of 12. Okay. Next, let's move on to the range of 12 to 16. 12 to 16 milligrams. Notice that that is nowhere to be found among non-filtered cigarettes. So we would put a 0 for its relative frequency. However, among filtered cigarettes, there is a range from 12 to 16, and there is 1. And so we would take, to find relative frequency, we would take 1 divide by 25, and then take that times 100 to get a frequency of 4%. And let's move on. What about the range of 17 to 21 milligrams of tar? Well, it turns out that there are actually cigarettes that fall in that class among both non-filtered and filtered cigarettes. So let's go first to this non-filtered cigarette group. So its relative frequency would be 1 out of 25, because this column does sum up to 25, just like the other column does. They both, in fact, sum up to 25. So let's take its relative frequency by taking 1 divided by 25 times 100, and you get a relative frequency of 4%. And then moving on to the other column, for filtered cigarettes, its relative frequency would be 5. 5 divided by 25 times 100, which would be 20%. Okay, next, we have the class 22 to 26. So its frequency is 2. So among non-filtered, its relative frequency would be 2 divided by 25 times 100, or 8%. And then among filtered cigarettes, The range from 22 to 26, its relative frequency would be 16 divided by 25 times 100, or 64%. And then for those that have tar content from 27 to 31 milligrams, for non-filtered cigarettes, that would be 15 divided by 25 times 100, or 60%. And then for filtered cigarettes, that would be, there is no range 27 to 31. So for filtered, that would be 0. And then down below, for 32 to 36, we have 6. We have 6 out of 25 times 100, or 24%. And then for filtered, there are none in that range from 32 to 36, so it would be 0. And then for 37 to 41, we have 1 cigarette among non-filtered, so that would be 1 out of 25 times 100, or 4%. And then last but not least, for filtered, there are no cigarettes with a milligram range of 37 to 41, so that would be 0. Let's check our answer. Hooray! We got it correct. So then there is one more part remaining. It asks you to continue. So it asks you to compare the numbers and see if cigarette filters appear to be effective. If we compare the two relative frequencies for non-filtered and filtered cigarettes. So what do you think? Well, it appears that the relative frequency of the higher tar classes is greater for the non-filtered cigarettes. So I would be inclined to say that they are effective. So that is correct. We chose answer C. The relative frequency of higher tar classes is greater for non-filtered cigarettes, indicating that they are effective. Thanks for watching.